all, heard it all. Oh, what you know about me? I've done it all, just want it all. Oh, what you know about me? I've seen it all, heard it all. Oh, what you know about me? Oh, what you know about me? Oh, what you know about me?
Hey everybody, we are back. Welcome to another episode 13 of More Than a Title. I'm your host as usual, Jarrett Thomas. I just want to send a special thank out to everybody who's been returning. A special shout out to all my owls on the check-in. Love you guys. And welcome to all those first-time listeners. So for anyone who's a first-time listener, the premise of this show is going to be different than your traditional marketing sales podcast that focus on the tips and tricks. Those are important, but I'm just a firm believer that there's more valuable lessons in one's journey than the day-to-day execution. So that's the real reason why I wanted to create this show and learn more about the person behind the title. And of course, we'll share some gems along the way. And today we have a special guest. He is a business and technology leader with over 30 years of global technology and business transformation experience, has worked for companies like AT&T, Ernst Young, L Brands, Gap, Zendesk, and is currently the CEO of HootSuite. He is also a father, husband, expert traveler, avid reader, a board member of the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program, sports enthusiast, fisherman, art collector, and also claims to have a decent jump shot. We're going to test that out. But let's please put a warm welcome for CEO of HootSuite, Tom Kaiser. How are you, Tom?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jarrett. It's great to be here.
No, absolutely. It's like I said in the green room, this is the first episode that I'm nervous and so excited and nervous at the same time. I appreciate you for taking time out your day to come chat. So, so if you want to, Matt, before we start, have you had a chance to listen to the podcast?
I've listened to some excerpts of the podcast. I haven't sat down and listened to an entire podcast, but I definitely follow you. I give you some likes and some props along the way. And I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the courage that you've got to get out here and to open yourself up and to share yourself as you're asking really detailed questions of your guest. I think everybody learns from that and gets a really good feel for who you are and how real you are.
Absolutely. And I appreciate it. I will tell you, the first time I got a like from you, I felt it was crazy. I must have told my whole family. I'm like, what the Tom is liking my post and all this stuff, man. It was just insane. And also, we've had conversations. So I just appreciate your support. It means a lot to me. And let's take it from the top. So I would love to, let's start with your upbringing. So, tell us a little bit more about your upbringing and kind of walk us through how you got into tech initially.
Yeah, I grew up in the southeast of the United States. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and Pensacola, Florida. Went to school at Auburn. My degree was in a version of computer science at the time, so I learned to program in assembler and COBOL, and my first jobs were in telecom billing, coding, kind of down in the bowels of a very large traditional building. And really got introduced to more modern technology by moving over into consulting. I joined Ernst Young in management consulting and kind of grew up there. I spent 12 years there, kind of learning how to solve business problems with clients, but also learning how to lead a team and then lead a bigger team and then lead cross-functional teams, solve bigger and bigger problems. So really grew up in that business and got a broad range of experiences. My last consulting gig, like many consultants, was putting a strategy together for a company, and they were like, good idea, why don't you come do it? So that was how I ended up at L Brands, or Limited Brands as it was called at the time, in specialty retail, and spent a handful of years there in the CIO role and replatforming their business onto more modern technology, and then got recruited over to Gap to do a similar version of that. And then made my move into more modern technology, being in San Francisco and being close to technology, over to joining Zendesk and helping grow and scale that business. And then the last piece being, hey, I think I want to be a CEO, answering the call on HootSuite and stepping into that. So I live in San Francisco. I've lived there now for 12 years. I'm on this call today in Atlanta, so I spend a huge chunk of my time in Atlanta. I still consider Atlanta and really the Southeast home. This is where my people are. This is where I feel most comfortable, but love San Francisco and certainly have part of my life there as well.
That's amazing. And shout out to Atlanta and shout out to the A team and everybody down there, all the owls. Yeah, man, definitely.
This office is hopping. It's a fantastic office that we opened up earlier this year, for sure.
Yep, I love it, man. One thing that stood out to me just now, I'm very curious, right? So you were doing consulting. What was the thing that ticked for you that said, man, I want to be a CEO versus starting your own consultancy agency?
I never thought about being a CEO. I never thought about C-level roles. I like solving problems, and in consulting, I got to do that at more and more scale as I kind of grew up through my career. But I never had like I need to be at this title mindset. I thought about providing, and I thought about doing interesting things and solving interesting problems, and so I kind of backed into my first C-level role by going and driving a consulting like transformation inside of limited brands as an employee there, and then stepping into the IT organization and then taking on the CIO role. And I loved operations. I loved making things work better. I love solving problems, and then trying to be able to tell the story of the problem you're solving and the value that's going to be delivered and the better experience that's going to be created either for your employees or for your customers. So yeah. that's my path. I didn't have a lot of examples around me growing up. I grew up of humble means, and I didn't have examples around me. I'd never met a CEO before. I'd never met a CIO before. And so I didn't have a frame of reference of what those roles really even meant.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat, and that's how I was initially in my career too, where I didn't have too much CEO influence. And to look at where we are now, man, it's just amazing to be able to learn from yourself and other market leaders and hear your journey, right? I had CEOs come on here that said, I mean, I had to sleep in a car for 6 months just to bootstrap it and get things going. And really just says, how bad do you want it? And I think that's the main difference. And I think I'm the same way with like you, man. I love solving problems. I love helping people. And that's why I love sales versus the marketing. Shout out to Maggie, because I know you're over there. Shout out to Maggie. But that's what I love about the customer journey, man. So like when it comes to, we talked about this for everybody that's listening right now. We had a conversation about Bob Myers, who's the GM of the Golden State Warriors. And you made a comment about, it's a difficult job and, living with those decisions that you make for the business, right? And I would love to ask yourself that, right? Like, how do you deal with that pressure of making making those business decisions for an organization like ours, right? Like, what is that like?
Yeah, it's it's why I wanted to be a CEO. It's I in Zendesk COO for 4.5 years. I was in different C-level roles at Gap. I had a lot of autonomy to make decisions inside of my organization, but as far as decisions for the company, I was just one more piece of input into those, and someone was making the decision. So I felt like, I'm old, I've got a lot of experience, I'm ready to step into this role and make the decisions. But you feel the weight of it when you're making really substantial decisions that have a long-term impact on the company, whether it's an investment, whether it's an acquisition, whether it's stopping doing something. You feel that. So you got to surround yourself by people that you trust and who can bring to you the different points of views and perspectives to help you make the decision. And then you got to make the decision. You got to own the decision. And then how that decision plays out, it may be 6 months, it may be 2 years. And then you've got to be open to what you learn from it. Like, what does the data say about that decision? And then, continue to adjust. If you're singularly minded and you don't want to learn and you just want to defend the decision, whether it's working or not, you're not going to learn, and you're going to make the bad decision or the wrong decision in the same way over and over again. So you've got to be humble enough to listen to what worked and didn't work in the decision, to take the criticism, and then to apply that learning so that you're making a better decision next time. And that was what you and I were talking about with Bob Myers. And think about the decisions that you're making as a general manager of an NBA basketball team. Bob Myers is the GM for the Warriors. I'm a season ticket holder for the Warriors. My seats are about 12 rows behind where Bob Myers sits, behind the bench. So I get to at least see him from a distance. But he's making decisions, like you think about the decision they made around Andrew Wiggins, and how they went and got Andrew Wiggins, and the number of movements that had to take place. And that investment, 2 years ago, really in a downtime for the Warriors, and how that's now coming to fruition in this, or the drafting and development of Jordan Poole, or the going and picking some of these G League players off that they've developed into these critical roles like GP2 or GP3 and some of these players. It's a game of chess. Some of it's immediate, and then some of it is a multi-year play, and then some of them completely don't work. Like you make big bets on someone and they don't work out. So you've got to be confident in your decision. You've got to have good advisors and make the best decision, but then you've got to learn from that so you don't repeat the mistakes that you need to make. And you got to think about how to gel it all together into something that works.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing from Bob Meyer's perspective is the patience, right?
Yeah.
Like they had where they were not last year because we lost in the play-in, but the year before that had the worst record in the league and then made right completely. So you could have easily just said, all right, man, I'm just cleaning house. I'm going to do that. But they just stacked their assets and just live with the decision. So I'm curious for you, like, have you had a decision like that? Or how, when you make a big decision, when do you know, or one thing ticks off to you to say, I have to pivot? Like, when does that happen when you want to stay on and being patient?
Yeah, if you think about like what we're doing at HootSuite, we're taking this, we're a 13-year-old company. We're taking a brand and a company that really defined the space of social media management and up-leveling it. And so in the last really 15 months, we've added a chief revenue officer, a chief marketing officer, a chief product officer, a chief financial officer. So we're bringing leadership in to take us to the next level. And then you want individual talent, but you want talent that can be part of a leadership team as well. And then the ultimate results are the business results that you're coming out with each quarter on how you're doing and how that team is doing collectively to drive that. And at HootSuite, we've done that at the board level as well. We've added 4 independent board members this past fall, and so we're gelling at the board level as well while we're driving a strategy. And ultimately, in business, you've got a scorecard, and it shows up in your revenue and your revenue growth. It shows up in your gross margin, and your gross margin growth. It shows up in your market share, and a whole bunch of other metrics. So we've got at the highest level a big scorecard over us, and then we've got lots and lots of metrics that we're measuring along the way.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Has there ever been, because there's a lot of moving pieces, has there ever been a time in your leadership, not necessarily here at HootSuite, where you had a great idea and then maybe your team around you is saying, Tom, we have to do it another way, and then you went with them and you were glad? Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, I listen. I mean, if I ask for input, which like I do this with recruiting people, you certainly want strategic decisions, and you can get yourself. I can get myself, passionate about something and get blind to some areas. And if you bring other people into that decision, you got to listen. I tell my leaders this all the time. It's like, we ask for the input. You may not like the input, but we got to listen to it and then balance that with the hypothesis or the idea that we came in with. If you're asking for input, and you're not listening to it, then you're quickly going to find yourself making decisions alone and a lot of critics around you, as opposed to feeling ownership and engaged. So I can't think of a specific example, but I know that I quite regularly am given input that changes the way that I think about things, and I adjust to it. I don't have such pride that I can't adjust to or change the way I think about something based on better input from someone who perhaps is even closer to the decision that needs to be made than I am.
Absolutely. That's great insights, man. And I think, I'll be honest with you, Tom, I think that's what I respect most about you. I've had the CEO of Revolt come on last year on one of my other podcasts, Rankable, and he said something about trying not to show up as the perfect leader, but being imperfect. And I think that's what I really respect about you. I feel like you said, just being able to listen, right? Because when you're at that level, it's very easy for your ego to be like, I am the boss and this is my decision. We've all seen it at some level, but for you, you don't come off like that. And I think that shows across the organization about how we move and things like that. So I think that's amazing. And I'm curious for you, because it's a lot of pressure being at your level, and especially dealing with what we have to do with the LRP and things. How do you cut off? How do you shut off, or how do you balance family priorities and work. Because for me as a salesperson, I can't shut off, Tom. I'll tell you right now, I'm thinking about Q4 and like my renewals and all this stuff. Like I can't, my girlfriend's like, baby, just cut off. I can't, my mind is just moving constantly. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's hard, and it's, I'm in a different stage in my life. My kids are all, I have one daughter who's a senior, going to be a senior at Ole Miss. My stepdaughter just graduated from Emory. She's going to UCLA Law School. My stepson's at UC Boulder. So I have less immediate family pressure of being there. I've got to provide. And I've got to be available, but I have less family pressure. But I think, what I've tried to do is observe leaders, like through my career, especially in consulting, but then through my career, of different leaders, of what worked and didn't work for them, what was effective and I didn't feel effective. And, the worse the leader, the more I learned from them of things to do and not to do that I tried to apply into the way that I led. As well as coming up with kind of my own internal systems of how I stopped and thought about things, how I created my list of the things that I wanted to focus on. And the way I've been able to balance things is by being super organized. Like I am incredibly organized. I write everything down. I start every day with I've been carrying the same notebook for 25 years now, and I've got walls and walls of them. But every day, kind of creating my list of these are the most important things for me to work on the day, and being organized about it. And that allows me to be able to put things kind of on the shelf in my brain when I know that I've thought through things. What's eating at me usually is the things I haven't been able to think through. And the more that I can think through something and kind of put it on the shelf and then pull it out at the right time, that allows me to kind of put my brain into something else, my brain to focus on you, my brain to focus on my wife and my family, or a Warriors game as it was last night. So it's coming up with the system that works for you to get yourself organized, and then recognizing where you are. Like I just read a quote, which is, the more your brain is working and overworking, the more that you need to slow it down and write it down. If you feel like your brain is underworking, you need to go read some things and stimulate your brain to get it going. But it's like recognizing where you are physically and mentally, and the things that you need to do to balance things, and then prioritizing the most important things in your life. So prioritizing your family, prioritizing your health, making time, dedicating time to those things so that you're not out of sequence. But kind of the younger you are and the earlier you are in your career, I mean, the more you're going to be focused, and it's going to be a big part of your life, because this is where you're learning. This is where you're building that foundation of like, what is it that I want to do? And equally important, what is it that I don't want to do? And how do I get better at this thing? What are the things that I need to be doing to get better at this thing?
No, great advice. And I think that's something I need to personally work on, being organized. I have my whiteboard, so I put everything I need to do for the day. That it helps a bit. But if I'm being honest with you, Tom, I had no plan, man. I had zero plan. I'm sure most people probably feel the same way. Like even with the LinkedIn journey, right? Like it just derived from asking a simple question to myself, is like, there has to be a better way to do this, right? Like it was dealing with my mental health. And I'll tell you a quick story, right? Before coming into, HootSuite, I was at an agency and I was dealing with deep depression, man. I was killing it on LinkedIn. I'm getting impressions. I'm getting people hitting me up in the DMs, but I'm hard to quantify it. So my bosses are like, it's cool, man, and all that other stuff. But we need revenue right now. And I was still, a top performer there. But by the end of my tenure, I just felt undervalued. I felt underappreciated. I felt burnt out. And I even said this during my interview process. I was like, I think with Darren, shout out to Darren. I'm like, man, let me be honest with you. You are getting a fraction of Jarrett. But if you can get me to a happy space, man, if I can just be happy where I am, which I am right now, the doors are going to open. And that's what we've seen now. So I'm also curious, have you ever dealt with that sort of level of like, have you ever dealt with being underappreciated, undervalued, or even depression? And how did you kind of overcome that to get to where you are?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it is a natural part of your career. Maybe natural is not the right way to say it, but you're going to have disappointments and frustrations. You're going to get exhausted. I spend a lot of years traveling. I'm about to become, I think, a 3 million miler on Delta. I'm about to become a multi-million miler in United. I've traveled a lot, and had to go to a lot of different places back when you had to do everything face to face, and it wears you out. Customers can be unhappy with you and unload on you, and if you feel responsible and you feel accountable, you feel that. You feel it like right in the heart. You want to make it right with them, and so you do those things. You work with, working in retail, I got to work with some incredibly talented people, but also some incredibly difficult people, and that can weigh on you too as you try to figure out how to navigate all of that. And so it's really, it's trying to make the time to think about yourself and like, what is it you need? The things, intuitively that make you happy. The things that are good for you that make you happy. The bad things too. And it's how do you get the right balance of those good things and the right amount of time to keep balancing that out, to keep it into perspective. This is it's a marathon. Your whole career is a marathon. There's a lot of different decisions. It's a marathon without a map. So there's a lot of different decisions that you can make along the way. But it's really it's a day-to-day kind of balancing act that you're on of prioritization, and you got to keep prioritizing yourself in there and those things that are important to you along the way, so that you don't go down that spiral. And if you start feeling yourself going down that spiral, more and more reflecting on what is it that is getting me on going down the spiral, and what are the things that have worked for me to stop it or to get me out of it. And sometimes that requires professional intervention, but many times it's recognizing it. I can see this is starting to happen. I know these are the things that helped me come out of it. It's to call my mom. It's to, do this thing with my family. It's just to go shoot basketball for a little while, or go, have some beers with not just my general buddies, but some specific buddies that I can talk about real stuff with. And come away from that energized. But it's finding the things that can give you that energy to stop that spiral and get it going the other direction.
Oh, that's so true. And that's great advice, man. Because I think what makes me happy is also what's causing the spiral, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? What makes me happy is helping people. So that's why I'm doing the LinkedIn stuff. That's why I answer the calls at 7, 8 o'clock. And then even though you do all those things, it still feels like that's not enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, it's hard to cut off and prioritize yourself in those instances where it's like, man, I know people need help. I know I want to help people. There's a Jarrett out there somewhere that's, in the Bronx that's like trying to break into tech, and he doesn't see anybody that looks like himself or has the same mindset or comes from background. And I feel like I have to constantly show up. And sometimes that pressure is like, damn, I'm just Jarrett from the Bronx. I don't ask for the pressure. Tom, I didn't ask for that. I just want to be myself.
Well, but you do have to recognize, time is, it's the most important asset that you have. It's passing.
Yeah.
You can control your time. You can say no. You can say no to a whole lot of things. Some things you can't say no to, but many, many things you can say no to. And it's like, what is the filter of which you live your life and you spend your time? And kind of you have to think about it through the lens of where do you get energy and where is energy sucked out of you as well, and understand that and how to balance that as well. But especially the older you get, the more you recognize how precious time is, and you get more protective of your time. And I think the earlier you can recognize that in your career, the more it sets you up for success and for being able to balance all of the things you're trying to balance.
Yeah, that's great advice. And like Mom always says, you can't be everything to everybody, right? And
saying no is empowering, and it's not rude. It's not mean. I mean, you can explain why you're saying no, but saying no is very, very empowering.
I feel like as soon as I say no, you're a jerk.
Some people are going to think that, not your people though. That's
exactly. Exactly. That's a great point, man. And also, like, it's so many different ways I do. So many questions I want to ask. One thing I do want to ask is about brands, right? So, what is Tom's favorite brand, and what is it about that brand that stands out to you that makes it your favorite? I'm just curious.
Yeah, Yeah, I love brands. I love our brand. Our HootSuite brand is
Yep.
amazing,
Sure.
and some of the things that we're doing with it are going to be super exciting. I love to fish. I grew up fishing with my dad and granddad, and my fishing has evolved and gotten more specialized into fly fishing, primarily freshwater fly fishing. So there's a brand called Sims, which makes very specific fly fishing equipment that has built this kind of deep, high quality set of fly fishing products, and this wonderful brand that every time I hear from them, it excites me because it makes me think about this special thing that I love to do. And they have very relevant offerings. And there's a series of fly fishing and surfing brands like that that I attach with kind of my ideal escapes for how I balance life that I really, really enjoy. I've got brand loyalty to the things that I buy over and over again. So I buy AG jeans over and over again. And so I've got this deep loyalty to AG that kind of allows them to have quality issues and me to be frustrated by them, but to work. Same with Delta Airlines.
Yeah.
For many years, I flew back and forth between San Francisco and Atlanta every other week for 12 years while my daughter was growing up in Atlanta. So every other week I was on the Friday morning 6 a.m. flight, and every Monday morning I was back on the 8 a.m. Flight. So I knew their planes, I knew their crews. I was providing them feedback over and over again as to what they could do better. And then it started improving, which I took as they were listening to my feedback. But it helped build a loyalty there. But anyway, I have certain brands that I've used over and over again that I have a lot of loyalty to.
Love that. And what I love about the Sim story, and what I love about those fishing and all of those niche brands like the surfing, they're great at building community because they don't have the mass quantity of audience like that. But the ones that do, they get it and they really cater to that specific audience.
Yeah.
And I also have to ask you, because I'm a fisherman too.
Yeah.
What do you fish? Like, what is your favorite? Like, what do you usually catch? I'm a striper. I go for bluefish. I love porgies.
Yeah, those are all good Northeast fish. So growing up in the Southeast, I grew up bass fishing and then learning to saltwater fish when we moved to Pensacola. But my real love of fishing is for trout, specifically cutthroat trout, primarily in Wyoming. So standing in a river and moving water, moving around, you're basically hunting for fish in very shallow, very fast moving, very cold water. There's just nothing like it. It takes your entire focus. You're surrounded. You periodically stick your head up, and you're surrounded by beauty. But you're so focused on trying to match up the right fly at the right spot in the right current to catch that fish and have that battle. It's tremendous fun. And then I release them. I don't eat them. I release them. And
there you go. Well, I'm a catch, clean, and cook type of guy.
There we go.
So I'm not mad at that. I'll tell you a quick story about one of my favorite memories, and I would love to know yours from fishing, right?
Yeah.
I remember, first of all, the part I love about fishing is just the experience. I don't care if I catch anything. It was just me being with my dad. I have so many memories. We used to be on 96th Street right there on East Side, right there on the FDR, and we would catch 40-pound striped bass. And he'd had me in sleeping bags at 5-6 years old. We doing overnight trips. I hated it as a youngin'. As I get older, I love the aspect of being in it. I remember one trip, we was in Poconos in Pennsylvania. We was going down to a small lake. We were fishing for guppies and some other stuff, right? Poles in the water. All of a sudden, we see a bear cub. Never forget that. We see a bear cub. I'm like 9 years old. Yeah. All I remember is my dad saying, "Stop right now." Just head for the hills. Literally, as soon as we got to the top of the hill, the mother bear came running out to the cub, maybe 100 yards from where we from. And it would have been real trouble. And I'll never forget that. That was one thing I remember Dad saying. Shout out to Dad for saving my damn life.
Exactly. Life lesson. Don't get between a bear cub and its mom. That is for sure. Yeah.
That's it, man. Do you have any stories like that, man? Any ones that you remember that's like, oh man, that brings
I've got, my granddad, my dad's dad in Birmingham worked for 30 plus years at US Steel, and he retired when I was in, I think, 5th or 6th grade, and suddenly had nothing to do. And so he started coming to pick me up about every second or third day to go fishing because, I wasn't doing anything. It was summertime. We were out of school. And so, I took it for granted that you just go fishing with your granddad like that. And we would catch all kinds of stuff and experiment with things. And I would listen to his crazy stories. about growing up, which he had endless stories about. But, hindsight, it helped. Like those stories, I'll periodically want to pop into my brain, and those stories and that history and that connection all kind of help shape me dramatically. Just by, good old boring bass fishing around, we were fishing at like primarily Smith Lake in the northern part of Alabama, or Logan Martin, which a little east of Birmingham. But, just an amazing, quiet, boring, fantastic period of my life that I'm super, super grateful for. And I think investing that time as a parent around something you love, even if your kids completely fight it and hate it and it's boring, they're going to remember it, and they're going to remember it in a good light.
That's it. And that's what I remember, man. That's exactly what I remember. I used to be, Dad, I want to play Sega Genesis. I want to play Coach K basketball, NBA Live. No, you're getting your ass up. 6 in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, tugging tackle boxes and stuff. And now those are memories I'll never forget, man. I know we're coming up on time. I just want to ask you one last question, Tom. Just what do you get excited about, and what are some things you're looking forward to for the future, man?
Well, I'm excited about the Warriors right now. We're sitting on the precipice of game 6 and winning this thing, which is super, super excited. Most of the things I'm excited about now are, directly to do with kids and kind of what they're going to do, and seeing them kind of grow up in university and what they can become. The world's a mess in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways, the world's never been more exciting, and what you can do if you work hard and put your mind to it. So super excited about that. I'm excited about HootSuite, what we're doing here, as we get this train rolling, and what we're trying to build a great company for the long run. And I'm super excited about that. I think those are the main things.
Yep, I definitely believe in it. And I do want to ask you, because I know a lot of owls are watching this too. And just for myself, so I aspire to be a CEO one day. I'm not sure where my path or my journey is going to take me, but what advice would you give to myself and other owls that maybe aspire to be a CEO one day? What's the best advice you maybe have gotten as well?
I think the era we're in now is very different than like the era I grew up in. The era I grew up in, CEOs sat on floors by themselves. You didn't see them. You maybe heard from them periodically. You read about them in the press. They were not accessible. The world we're in today, everybody's accessible. Successful CEOs, very few of them can be completely removed from folks. So there's access to a lot of different styles, approaches, input. So I think being a student of that, asking questions, there's so many different kind of blogs and different things that you can read and listen and hear from them, and then thinking about what you heard and how do you apply it to what you're doing, because a lot of this is about building the right habits. It's building the right habits around skills, so that at each level you're building the right skills, so that you can move up a level, and you can scale that, and then you can move that up a level. And it's learning and building off of that. I mean, many of the frameworks I use today are the same frameworks I used 25 or 30 years ago, that I learned they worked for me, and they were effective, and they were speedy. Some aren't. Some you keep learning, but it's like just continuing to build and to scale, and to recognize that there's never a plateau. You're never done in your journey there.
There's no plateau. And for all the owls watching, because for those who aren't a part of HootSuite, we have a saying called "Give it a try," and that's what I want to say for this. Like, for anybody, there is no ceiling to what we can do. This is why I'm so avid about the personal branding stuff. This is why I say go out there, because there's no limits to what we can do. 9 months ago, I was depressed, not knowing where I was going to be, man. And like, I'm talking to the CEO of HootSuite right now, which is amazing to me. And I just want to say, for anybody, like, how do you get your guests and how do you do it? I just ask. I give it a try and I go for it. So anybody that's watching this, if you can learn anything from me, it's to go for it. Give it a try. Don't let anybody tell you no. And if you do get a no, man, there's always going to be a yes somewhere, right? So just keep shooting for it. Keep up leveling. And I just want to say to you, Tom, thank you for taking time out your day. This means a lot to me personally. I know my family's watching. Everybody's watching. They're excited, man. So I just want to thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for everything you're doing for HootSuite, man. And thank you for your transparency and being so real. So that means a lot. And I'm just excited to what we do, man.
Awesome. Thank you, Jarrett. I appreciate the time. This is quite the thing you've created. You should be really proud.
Thank you so much, Tom. That means a lot. And then when you come down or you come to New York, we're going to go either fishing on the FDR or I'm going to check you out on a horse and we're going to film it.
All right.
We're going to come up with it. But thank you for everybody that's listening, everybody that tuned in. Thank you for the continued love and support. We have one more episode for the season, which is on Thursday, my birthday. I'm turning 34. I'll be talking to Steven Schmidt, CEO of Tidal. So I appreciate all the DMs, the love, support. Friday, I will be on vacation, my first vacation in 3 years' time.
Nice.
I'm excited. I'm going to a Caribbean island, no kids, feet up, no plans. I can't wait, man. So thanks to everybody. And Tom, thank you again. And this is another great episode of More Than Entitled, man. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Talk to you soon. All right.
What you know about me? Seen it all, heard it all. Oh, what you know about me? I've done it all, just one.